Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very senior corporate professional turned coach, Mr. Jagdish Kini from Bangalore, India. Jagdish, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. What a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. Jagdish is an executive coach and author, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors, so we'll talk about his book, which you can see behind him. He's a business coach, author, and past president of ICF Bangalore chapter. He's the former managing director and CEO of Gillette India. He's worked with Airtel and L'Oreal, and he is a board member. So, Jagdish, after such an amazing journey, let me start by asking you, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Okay, this is a subject of mine which, if somebody broaches, I can speak for hours.
I agree.
But let me just try to summarize it. Typical middle class family education was a primary focus for us when we were growing up. My parents really insisted on a great education, and it was like education. But for me, it was more on a rounded, all-round approach. So therefore,
Correct.
Sport was as important for me as much as my curriculum. But one thing I definitely had, which I don't know how I don't think I developed it. It probably came to me from my DNA, was a curious mind. And I did many different things, which an average boy from a city probably would not have the opportunity to do. When I used to visit my village every year for a month and a half, because of which I got I've driven a bullock cart, I've climbed coconut trees, I've tried to start and operate a rice mill which my grandfather owned. Made books and printed books in the printing press.
Right.
I did some van sales selling Hindustan lever products and mantles and stuff like that. But for my career, I started my career with Siemens. I was in the factory at Thane, at Kalwe, in fact, just outside Thane. I was in their motors factory, and then later, after 3.5 years there, I went on to do an MBA program. Post my MBA program, I joined Procter & Gamble. I worked with Procter & Gamble for about 9 years, 9+ years. The first 4.5, 5 years was in finance. Then I moved to marketing and sales. Then this opportunity came up of setting up L'Oreal in India. I joined L'Oreal in England, and then I came to India to set it up. And it was a great opportunity, setting up something with no worries of funding. L'Oreal was funding everything. And my boss, Henri Movillier, kept reminding me that we're building L'Oreal in India for our grandchildren, not for you and me.
Correct.
So it was like amazing learning for me. Post my stint at L'Oreal, I had this goal of wanting to be a managing director of a multinational company by the age of 40. And I was approaching that when Jeff Kingsley came as the first managing director for L'Oreal in India. And I spoke to Henri, and Henri said, I told him that I'll be looking for a job because that goal was important for me. And he admitted me into INSEAD for an 18-month advanced management course. And he said, at the end of this course, after 18 months, if I don't place you as a country manager anywhere in the globe, you're free to leave. And that was a gentleman's promise. And unfortunately, he did try a lot, but it didn't work out. Gillette offered me to join them as the managing director for India. But prior to that, I had to be their regional director in Dubai. And then I came to India to merge the acquired different companies. When I was in Gillette, the mid-40 blues hit me quite hard. And I kept asking myself as to what am I doing in life? Is this really what I want to do? Trying to get people to shave every day. And I don't know, somewhere things were not gelling and not falling in place. There was a void which I couldn't answer. And then I used to keep thinking, and somewhere I realized that I wanted to have an influence which is much larger than what I was having as a business leader. And I began asking myself, an NGO was not an option because my financial goals were not met. And they say that when you empower your goal, the reticular activation system, the RAS in your brain
Mm,
activates,
mm,
and you actually begin to start seeing opportunities. It's not that these opportunities were not there,
mm,
and one such opportunity came when I met Sunil Mittal. And Sunil was actually talking to me of his vision. He was that time, I mean, Airtel at that time, and was
mm,
only in Delhi and in Himachal Pradesh.
mm,
And he was talking of building a multinational organization
mm,
for Airtel. And when he was talking of his vision, on the other side of the same coin,
mm,
I saw my purpose, which is, I said, here's an opportunity to change the way an average Indian lives.
mm,
And it was like a scary purpose,
mm,
and I remember having a dialogue with myself, and the conservative me kept telling me that you are doing well in Gillette. Why do you want to leave a good
mm,
career? Carry on. Airtel is too small. And then another part of me kept telling me that it's a great opportunity. You can actually, if you succeed, you will be able to change the way an average Indian lives. So don't let go of this opportunity. And if you fail, well, at least you tried.
mm,
And I took up that challenge and joined Airtel. Came to Bangalore to acquire the JTM property.
mm.
That time, JTM, we had a license for Andhra, Karnataka, and Punjab. And then we expanded to all the 23
Yeah.
licenses, and
If
then
I can pause you for a
Airtel
minute,
50. Yeah,
because I want to move on to many other questions.
yeah, yeah.
One of the things that you talk about, Jagdish, is that you're on a mission to empower leaders, entrepreneurs, and anyone who loves to dream big.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
on what you've just told me, I can understand, but please explain what you're doing to help others with an example.
Well, there are different examples. I coached a very young entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
and he was setting up his own company, and he wanted to be a global leader in the power transmission and,
Mm-hmm.
and 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 the decarbonization revolution and stuff like that. So it was such a pleasure talking to him and helping him in his journey. And today he's already made great strides. His company is there in India, and it's there in Brazil, and it's one or
Mm,
two other places.
mm,
And I see him in the news quite regularly, talking about a vision where he's trying to sort of get the different countries together, where
mm,
we are not talking of transmitting electricity only from within our country, but now
mm,
across the globe, and
mm,
helping, using the solar power in one country to help another country who probably does not have that kind of
mm,
opportunity. And
mm,
this young man is doing wonders. So
mm.
when I look back, I feel so good that I was associated with him at some time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And after such an amazing career that you've had with some of the top companies of the world, what made you decide that coaching is your next calling?
Actually, coaching, uh, it came up because I had along with my goal of wanting to be uh, an MD of a multinational company by the age of 40, I had another goal along with that, which I
Mm,
had made at the same time, and that was to quit industry at 50.
mm,
And my wife asked me, "What's the logic of 50?" And I said,
mm,
if I become at 40 and 10 years later, a decade
mm,
later, if I've done a good job, then somebody else needs to take over.
mm.
And if I have not done a good job, then somebody else definitely needs to take over.
Absolutely. Mm,
And uh, I started doing different things
mm,
after leaving industry.
mm,
I'd acted in two plays. I tried my hand at photography and
mm,
music and golf and many other things. And one of my coach said, maybe you should go back to industry.
mm,
Not telling me exactly the reason, but
mm,
maybe he found that the industry needed me. I don't know. But I started my consulting firm,
mm,
and then within 3-4 years we were growing, and we were working 13 hours a day, which
mm,
was not the reason why I left the industry. So
mm,
I had to choose, and I chose to do coaching because when I was in Airtel, I did one workshop,
mm,
customer centricity workshop, for about in batches of 100 for about 12,000 of my staff. And I enjoyed it so much that I realized it was giving me the satisfaction. And
Wonderful.
therefore, I went back to that to get that satisfaction. And I trained myself to be a coach, got certified. And the last 10, 12 years, I've been coaching executives across the board.
Fantastic. And given your own amazing background, how has this background supported your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
I think, I feel blessed here, I feel blessed that I've learned to build brands and manage brands at Procter & Gamble, build and manage companies at L'Oreal and at Gillette, and to build an industry at Airtel. And when I look back, my childhood exposure, I was a part of the Boy Scouts, the Road Safety Patrol, NSS, NCC. Everything seems to have played some role. I set up L'Oreal in India. I took Airtel to many different parts of the country.
Correct.
So all this kind of stuff gave me an experience and a confidence that my experience gives me the confidence that I can help people to understand their problems and to give them the confidence that they have it in them to really, face those challenges. Most of the time, our leaders have some kind of a fear of facing that challenge. And that fear is what we need to address. And once they, sort of overcome that fear and they take the first step, then it's a cakewalk for such leaders. These leaders, they're all brilliant in their own ways.
Correct.
They just get stuck in one small place sometimes. And I find that my experience and my training as a coach can really help them. And therefore, I'm here to, sort of empower their dreams.
Very, very interesting. And, when you were telling me about your own journey, you did mention two individuals. One was the L'Oreal head and one was the Sunil Mittal.
Yeah.
My next question is, how have you been shaped by different people in your life? And how are they influencing you as a coach?
Well, I think everybody in my life has played a role somewhere or the other in shaping my values. My grandfather, the way he did business, where the ethics was, top priority, and the way the value system he followed. My father, for example, the way he built my confidence to build my career by allowing me to experience the pain and joy of searching for a job, and allowing me to evolve and make my choices, and take ownership of my life and career. My family, my wife, my children, my sisters, everybody, and my bosses, right from Mickey Dayal to Sunil Mittal, have really contributed hell of a lot, because every discussion, every interaction for me is a learning opportunity. And I believe that if we are open to learning from others, I really took every opportunity to learn, and I still try that.
Very interesting. Again, big, drawing upon your own vast experience, having worked in India and outside India, what are some of the unique perspectives you bring to each one of your coachees?
I mean, when I say perspectives, it's like it's my beliefs in coaching. I would say it's more than perspectives, but some of them. Let me list it out. Just about 4 or 5. There are many more, but about 4 or 5 I have to list out. I'll say one of them is there is a solution for every problem. We need to be open to it. So therefore, my starting point is there is a solution. Let's look for it. Another one is I would say, I am what I am because of the choices I've made in the past.
Correct.
And if that be true, with my current choices, I have the power to create the future. So that's another of my sort of philosophies, I would say. Another thing I would say is, companies do not compete. Leaders do. So therefore, as a leader, you must understand that your competitors, it's the leader of the competition who's competing with you in terms of strategy and how he's going to shape the future versus how you are going to shape the future. And another one could be if I work on my awareness levels, I could move from good to great.
Very interesting. Okay.
An open mind is a learning platform in a thriving body. And one very important thing which I keep telling all my coaches is that you got to test the hypothesis. Your insights that you create for yourself, unless you test it, your learning is not complete and is not deep enough.
Mm.
So every insight that you create for yourself, and I think that's really the bedrock of for coaching. And really, I think coaching is not about the session that we have, but it's more about the period in between two sessions,
Mm.
the introspection that he does or she
Well
does.
said. Well said. Two more questions for coaching, and then I'll move to your book.
Yeah.
One of the things I have seen as a coach, and I've spoken to many people who are coaches, is the impact of culture. Yeah. A lot of us in India, particularly, have been actually brought up saying, let my work speak for itself.
Yeah.
Why do I have to talk about my own self? If my boss thinks he's good, it is his or her job to recognize me, etc., etc. I wanted to ask you, how does culture impact coaching?
A very interesting question. It's our past experiences which influence the way we respond and understand situations.
Correct.
And when especially in business, when we communicate, we think the other person has understood exactly the way we have communicated. When I say the way we have communicated, I mean the intent of the communication. The other person who's receiving the communication has her own interpretation of what she has heard. And that depends on the past experience which she comes from, which could be similar to yours.
Correct.
Or past events which were diverse, and she could connect the dots with those diverse events that she has faced. And it's very important for me, who's communicating with the other person, for me to understand that if we wish to build trust in this relationship, it's important for me to empathize with that person and make sure that my communication is landing well. I think there are so many of these blind spots in communication. I think in culture, we must understand that in another country, on another region, people have different experiences.
Correct.
And we need to understand that. Currently, I'm coaching a US citizen, and he's trying to understand the Indian culture for him to be able to contribute to his company's growth. Because he's looking after a team based in Pune, Bangalore, and Chennai. And he's getting his work done through these people based here. And he's based in the US with a smaller team in the US.
Wow.
So he's finding it a challenge of getting stuff across. And he in fact asked me, he said, somebody said to him within the team, oh, that person is from north of India, so therefore he does not mean this. So I was trying to understand, but he couldn't understand, and he really wanted to understand what does this mean. So, and I tried to explain to him that the North Indians have gone through a different kind of experience, and the South Indians have gone through a different kind of an experience, especially during the partition. And those are which have lasted impressions, and it's moving down from generation to generation. Though it is getting less and less impactful, and influence is getting less.
Yeah.
But still, that thing is there, and we need to understand that this could be the background that person is coming from.
Very interesting.
So I think culture plays a big role, and especially when it is across countries. And therefore, I tell leaders in India that they need to have an exposure, international exposure, move out of the country, stay there, learn to live with those people, and then come back to India. You'll be a much bigger leader. And
Well said. Well said. And a great point. Thank you for such a great response. Now, let me move to your book now. Release the Hostage, and we can see the book behind Jagdish. Jagdish, tell me a little bit, before you tell me about your book, I'm assuming it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm asking all our viewers and listeners to go and check it out. I will go and check it out myself.
Thank you.
Tell me about your book and the hypothesis.
Well, the reason for writing the book was, I became a coach, and with the underlying principle or purpose, I would say, is that I wanted to help others. So when I became a coach, I started charging. My professional fees were very low, and nobody wanted to engage me as a coach because they believed that he doesn't know coaching. So I realized that somewhere, the business model was very different. And I started taking my price up. And the more I took my price up, the more business I got.
Correct.
But it was taking me away from my purpose of wanting to contribute to many more people in the industry. And I found that I was now being isolated from people who couldn't afford me. And therefore, I said, let me write a book. And the book really is all about my own experience. When I say my own experience is how I grew, the failures that I had. I've had some major failures in, like I say this, till I was 25, I didn't achieve any of my goals. And after I was 25, I've achieved almost all my goals.
Wonderful.
And okay, the one reason perhaps is my wife came into my life. But the other reason is, I kept questioning myself, and I started doing things in different ways, and I found courage to sort of get out of the comfort zone. And though I didn't have a finance background, I preferred to major in finance. I joined Procter & Gamble in finance, and then I moved to marketing, which I didn't know much about. And then I moved to sales, and then I moved to setting up L'Oreal in India. And then I moved as a managing director for Gillette. I mean, when you go out from, if you are a managing director going to another company, being appointed as managing director, the entire team, has to accept you as the managing director. You've come from out, that. And then I went to Airtel, which was again a small company. I think I found this courage of jumping S-curves from one to another. And what helped me is what I tried to put in the book. So the book is really what I have used, the concepts I've used, the people I've heard, people I've talked to, people I've, and my own insights from industry as well as from my coaching. I tried to combine it into a book format which people can use to help themselves. I mean, I won't call it a self-help book, but I would say that it's a book which will help you introspect, a book which will help you plan to make your career the way you want.
So who or what is the hostage?
Me, myself.
Okay.
In the sense that the way I think, there's Judith Glaser who talks about the communication quotient. I've used that in a model, and I've put the communication quotient in the center of a triangle. And I've said that the communication quotient impacts your IQ, your EQ, and your SQ.
Okay.
And this is not how you communicate to others, but how you communicate with yourself. And very often I found that the way I communicated with myself was stopping me from doing things which I wanted to do. And I was holding myself in a way hostage. And that's really the crux of the book. I'm saying, if you hold yourself hostage, you're not able to move. So you have to release the hostage and move, take that step out of the comfort zone.
Wonderful. And Jagdish, my last question to you, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey and from our conversation?
I would say that one is be aware, have an open mind and be aware of everything around you. Aware of yourself, aware of your team, aware of your industry, aware of your company, aware of your markets. Become aware. And becoming aware is about having an open mind and a curious mind. Ask questions in a way that you will sort of want to know more. For you to want to know more, you have to start with the assumption that you don't know enough.
Correct.
You may be an expert. You may have seen that and done that. But if you start with the assumption you don't know enough, you will be surprised how you can learn from many, many other people. And all around you, there is learning available. So be aware. The other, I would say, is self-belief. Believe in your ability. Each one of us is a capable human being. And I think somewhere when we speak to ourselves and say, no, I'm not capable, I'm not good enough, you are actually making it true. So change your language. Language is very important. The way you speak to yourself, the brain is digital in nature and does not understand language as much as it understands pictures.
Correct.
So if you have a vision, put a picture to it. For example, just to give an example, when I wanted to change the way an average Indian lives, I had a picture of an auto driver, a fisherman, and my maid who was helping us at home. All these three people should be having a mobile phone in their hand. And if I can see these people using a mobile phone, I know that my purpose is on the way to being achieved. So I think it's very important to believe in yourself and to have a vision of what you want to achieve and the influence you want to leave behind or the impact you want to leave behind.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's really two things I would say.
Very interesting. And on that note, Jagdish, and your amazing lessons of be aware, have an open mind. And the second one you said was have self-belief. And what was very interesting was, and I love the way you put it, was to put a picture to your vision. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your amazing journey. I loved your goals of managing director at 40 and quit at 50, which you seem to have done very effectively. Thank you for talking to me about coaching, some of your deep philosophies and your all the learnings that you bring to a coaching relationship. Thank you finally for talking to me about your book. Good luck and all the best.
Ashutosh, it's been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity and thank you so much. And my best wishes to all the listeners and viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.